This is the start of the trailhead for those ambitious people who want to wear out their shoes. But being old and frail, we have decided to drive to the visitor center. This sign informs us that we may encounter rattlesnakes along the trail, but we're asked to just leave them be and not bother them. We arrive at the Lewis and Clark Caverns parking lot and gift shop. This is an interesting rock face. Notice all the brown minerals, most likely iron. Notice the incline above the gray rock. I do not know if this is a natural fault line or a man-made path. This is the Lewis and Clark gift shop and cafe. This is the gift shop security guard. He doesn't look like he poses much of a threat. Inside the gift shop is a display model of what we will see inside the caves. This is historical information about transportation to the cave entrance. A mountain lion inside the Lewis and Clark Caverns gift shop. A park ranger helps a visitor with map reading. A properly outfitted fishing guide can make your fishing trip a day to remember. Never disturb the bears foraging on the top shelf, no matter how hard they beg for attention. This is the sales booth for cave tour tickets. This is the Lewis and Clark Caverns staging area. This billboard talks of algae and mosses that are inside the caverns that are capable of living in total darkness. It also explains that as water flows through the limestone, it slowly dissolves the mineral calcite and carries it through holes and cracks in the rocks. The water then deposits this mineral as it drips through the caverns, creating a variety of stunning patterns that we see today. Here is a cave map. This is the hiking trail to the cave entrance. Bighorn sheep that used to live in this area were hunted to extinction. Feel free to pause the video if you're interested in reading the information boards. Here is a view of the cave's mountain taken from the picnic area. Trail to the cave entrance. Here's our footpath to the cave. Liz leads the way as we hike along the trail. Here's an interesting old tree. Seen here is the beautiful Jefferson Valley as taken from the Caverns pathway. The fossils in the rocks are pretty poor specimens. You really have to look to see anything. If you wish to read this, please pause the video. If you cannot find any fossils, The next slide will point out a few. At best, they are just poor quality fragments. This wild bush is in bloom. As we zoom in, notice the dainty little flowers. Sedimentary limestone. Pause the video to read the details. Notice the wild clump grass along the pathway. Another view down into the pretty Jefferson Valley. Once again, pause the video to read the details in the following 2 slides. Once again, the fossils are poor quality fragments and are difficult to identify. Keep walking, everybody. Unlike Lewis and Clark, we have a level pathway to follow. Check out the interesting rock face and cliffs. More wild grass along the pathway. Here's our first view of the lower pathway that we will be using to return to the parking lot. Notice the cave exit and the generator that operates the cave lighting. Here are some interesting rock layers. Notice the plants growing in the tiny cracks in this solid rock. There are more fossils in this rock. The following pictures will show you where they are. Another beautiful view of the Jefferson River Valley. Notice the telephone poles along the highway beside the river. Isn't this an interesting plant? I have no idea what it is. Once again, we're looking down at the cave exit pathway, some 300 feet or 100 meters below us. Pause on the next picture if you wish to read the information. Looking down into the Jefferson Valley, arrow number 1 shows the campsite, number 2 is the Jefferson River, and number 3 is Highway 2. Liz is way ahead of me on the switchbacks because I walk at about half her speed. Our campsite can be seen between the trees. If you look closely, you can see our trailer. At this switchback, we can see number 1, the entrance trail, number 2, the exit trail, and number 3, the parking lot at the visitor center. Our group assembles at the cave entrance. We are told the rules by the park ranger before entering. We get one final look at the Lewis and Clark campground before we head underground. A ventilation hole has been covered with a steel grate to prevent illegal entry into the caves. As we will see later, people have done a lot of damage in the past. One final look back. The upper trail goes to the caves, and the lower trail returns to the visitor center. The visitor center parking lot as seen from the entrance to the caves. If everybody would take nothing but pictures and leave nothing but footprints, we would not need these kind of rules. A young lady waits for her family as she prepares to enter the cave. Going underground. Down the rabbit hole we go, but not this rabbit hole. This is a small side cavern off the main entrance. Just inside the entrance, we encounter rock formations. Notice the moss growing in the cool, damp air. Pigeons take shelter in the mouth of the cave, but do not venture inside due to the darkness. Here's a view looking up through the grates over the ventilation shaft as seen from the inside of the cave. Miniature columns have formed inside a tiny cavern. These columns are 3 to 6 inches tall. A huge crevice near the roof of the cave. Deeper into the cave we go. Beautiful formations are seen through a hole in the wall. Here is a huge wall of white flowstone. On the right side of the picture are a couple limestone columns. Seen here is a huge gray flowstone. Limestone pillars. Limestone columns in a small cavern. Here we are looking up into a crevice. Within this single picture are several different rock formations. We descend still deeper into the caverns. On the left third of the picture is flowstone. The right 2/3 of the picture has several columns. Here we see more flowstone and columns. Notice how several of the stalactites have been broken off by vandals. More flowstone and columns are seen on the wall as we descend deeper into the cave. In this chamber, we can see multiple interesting rock formations. Notice the interesting formations in the top half of the picture. This beautiful rock formation has been formed by eons of dripping calcite. Seen here is a small cavern within the cave. Here is a beautiful pillar. In these beautiful rock formations, notice the vein of calcite running diagonally from bottom left to top right. A new pillar is starting to form. Notice the stalactites have fallen from the roof and now lay on the cave floor. A beautiful large column. Notice the broken stalactites in the upper right, done by vandals who wanted a souvenir of the caves. How selfish and inconsiderate these people were. Part of our tour group posed by a beautiful pillar. We proceed through the beautiful rock formations. A room full of beautiful columns. Absolutely stunning. In the center, we see more calcite formations, and on the left, notice all the vandalized stalactites. On the left, we see what is known as ribbon formations. Nature's beauty at its finest. Once again, notice how several of the formations have been damaged by vandals. How sad. The columns that have not been vandalized are beautiful. The only thing I can say about this is wow. A new stalagmite is forming on the floor of the cave under all the broken stalactites. Notice the floor is covered with cave pearls. These form when mineral-laden water droplets solidify. A room full of stalactites. Notice two of the formations have recently reached the floor to become new columns. In the top, a dominant stalactite stands out among the thousands. In the bottom, a pile of flowstone is slowly building up on the cavern floor. A beautiful column has been named the Chandelier by the park rangers. More flowstone formations. Flowstone, columns, stalactites, and stalagmites are all present in this cavern room. This room also has a nice variety of formations. If some of these formations look wet, it's because they are. Mineral-rich water constantly seeps through the rocks, constantly growing these formations. More beauty inside the cave. A formation called Cave Popcorn stands in front of a large column. This room has many formations. Not seen in previous photos are veins. This room has a variety of formations previously discussed. See how many you can identify. Including people in this photo gives a perspective as to just how big some of these caverns and formations are. Lying on its side in the center bottom is the remains of a collapsed column. Once again, using people as a size reference, we can see just how large this cavern chamber really is. A small cavern has formed in the wall of this chamber. Once again, selfish vandals have destroyed what could have been a beautiful formation, just so they could have a cave souvenir. Giant pillars and columns. As we zoom in, just to the left of the arrow is what is known as a bacon strip formation. Notice all the stalagmites in the background. This stalactite looks like a melting soft serve ice cream cone. Notice the variety of beautiful formations in this cave room. Beautiful giant stalactites. The guide suggested this column likely fell on its own due to the extreme weight. Seen here is a giant wall of flowstone. Check out all the different types of formations on this rock wall. Beautiful flowstone featuring stalactites and stalagmites, as well as some bacon strips at the bottom of the photo. Here is a flowstone column. Beautiful stalactites. Here's an interesting stalagmite. Here's a beautiful stalagmite. Notice the formations on the side of it. This beautiful column looks like a multi-tiered chandelier. Here's a white calcite formation. Here's a beautiful flowstone stalagmite with bacon strip ribbons along the top tier. Here are some pretty stalagmites. This reminds me of a beautiful rock garden. Seen here is a nice column. This is beautiful. Notice the brown stalagmites amongst the white ones. In the center of the picture is beautiful columns, and in the upper right is a fine example of bacon strip formations. Here are some interesting stalagmites with dome tops. More of nature's beauty. Beautiful pillars and columns. Another pretty column. Beautiful columns and pillars. This column reminds me of a Christmas tree. Calcite stalactites. This twisted stalactite looks like a skeleton stuck to the roof of the cave. This hole in the wall was likely caused by swirling water during the formation of the caverns. Notice the veins of mineral deposits on this fallen rock. Notice the variety of minerals in this formation. Here's a beautiful room with many different types of formations. Beautiful columns. A room full of multiple columns. At some time during the past, someone has broken the tops off of these beautiful stalagmites. How sad. If you use your imagination, these small columns could look like a man and a woman standing over a rock. This flowstone resembles a waterfall. Drawing your attention to the orange arrows, at some time during the past, someone has broken the tops off these beautiful stalagmites. Now, if you notice the green arrow, there's a small cavern going up into the wall. More beautiful columns and stalagmites. We are deep inside the cave, where in its natural state this would be in total darkness, and yet green algae is growing on this stalagmite. Notice the beautiful slowstone columns on the right. Beautiful, colorful slowstone. Notice the gold stalagmite in the middle of the picture. These next few pictures show various angles of a beautiful rock face. Here's some interesting formations. It's a shame they did not use a tan-colored electric wire to make it less noticeable. This wall of stalactites has been completely destroyed by vandals who've taken them home for souvenirs in the past, and now we all pay the price by not getting to enjoy the beauty of the original formations. Flowstone emerges from a small overhead cavern. Hundreds of small stalactites hang from the roof where mineral-rich water has been seeping through a crack in the rock. Seen here are some rather pretty stalactites. This picture shows stalactites and soda straws. It is interesting how the one stalactite in the center is bending at the tip. Thick, stubby stalagmites are starting to form on the cavern floor. More cave formations. Notice the variety of colors formed by the different mineral contents in the various rocks. Multiple formations and a hole in the roof. Notice all the stalagmites that have formed as a direct result of water and calcite leaching through the rock. Notice the rock surface in the top right has a completely different texture. Here are multiple different formations in a small area of rock. This is known as popcorn formation. Notice how this stalactite above the arrow has formed into a U shape. To access deeper regions of the cave, due to the low-hanging roof, we had to slide down this chute on our bum. Beautiful columns. Notice how the rock is a much darker color than it was in previous chambers. This room has amazing, huge pillars. Nature's doorway. This opening was so small, only a small child could squeeze through. Here's a view of the chamber beyond the small doorway. Passing a couple columns, we proceed still deeper into the cave. We look into another passageway, much too small for anybody to explore. Notice how the rock color has changed once again from the previous caverns. Too small to crawl through, a camera mounted on a pole could be inserted through the opening for a view of the next chamber. Another unexplorable, deep hole in the wall. Our tour group descends deeper into the cave. Nature's beauty. More interesting formations. Notice the popcorn formation on the right side wall. Absolutely awesome. Beautiful columns. Notice the smooth texture on the one in the center. This flowstone resembles a waterfall. Stunningly beautiful. Take a moment to notice all the different types of formations in this one room. Using our tour group as a point of reference, notice the size of these caverns. Notice how fat these stalagmites are. Cave popcorn and stalactites. Beautiful. Notice the dark gray formations in the middle of the photo. Now here's an interesting looking formation. I believe these tiny stalactites are referred to as soda straws. It's amazing the kind of beauty that is created underground, just beneath our feet. Notice the hook shape on the stalactite above the yellow arrow and the bacon strip formation on the left side of the red arrow. This stalagmite has had a good variety of minerals deposited on it over the years, resulting in the multiple colors. Notice the spot of green algae in the center of the picture. Keep in mind the natural state of these caverns is complete darkness. Interesting pillars. Notice how the tops of the stalagmites on each side of the pathway have been polished to a glossy shine by thousands of explorers placing their hands on the rocks. Numerous cave explorers have held onto this stalagmite to steady themselves as they make their way down the steps in the right side of this photo. More caverns to explore. Flowstone on the left side of the photo formed terraces on the stalagmites. Stunningly beautiful. There's so much to see in this photo, including the bacon strip formations on the right. A lot of times, cave exploring involves crawling through narrow passageways. A stalactite and stalagmite have recently joined to form a column. Notice the dainty formation at the point of contact. Here is a very pronounced bacon strip formation. It can also be called a ribbon formation. A nice white pillar, primarily made of calcite. Looking down into a crevice from the pathway, notice how unique the two columns are. This likely would have been a waterfall of columns had they not been vandalized. A look at the cavern roof. Descending deeper. Here's a beautiful giant column. Here's another giant column. The people in the left edge of this photo give a perspective of how large this room is. Here, we are looking almost straight down into a chamber. Notice the small cavern on the right going almost straight down. Too small to explore, but it would be interesting to know how deep it goes. Our tour takes us down through the opening on the left, following the arrowheads. The red spot in the middle of the picture is a shirt of one of the group walking in behind the rock. Sadly, this picture is very two-dimensional, but notice the beautiful column, which is sitting right in the middle of a room. The beauty of these caverns is endless. It seems every few steps there's something new to see. Take a few seconds to study these interesting formations. Could this dark spot be the remains of a dead bat that got preserved in the flowstone? Here is a view into an adjoining chamber. Notice the bright orange coloring on this rock. I'm not sure what mineral would cause this. Our tour guide demonstrates what the first explorers of this cave would have likely used for lighting: a candle inside an old coffee can. What a gorgeous rock formation! If you think of it as a chocolate fountain, you almost want to go stick your tongue in it. Have a look at the beautiful stalactite terraces. Also notice the ribbon strip formations. These are huge. Check out the micro caverns within the flowstone. Nature's beauty at its finest. Here, we're looking deep into a crevice. Notice all the beads of rock known as cave pearls. I don't have the proper words to describe the beauty seen here. We are guided further into the caves. Notice the purple stalactite. More of nature's beauty. Notice the bacon strips and the flowstone. Here's a beautiful little pillar. Also notice the bacon strip formations in the upper left. Notice the flowstone coming out of the floor of this cavern. A conglomerate of mineral deposits sits on the cave floor. Beautiful terraces and stalactites. Here we're looking into a deep hole in the cave wall. Notice the chandelier-type stalactites in the crevice. More inaccessible passageways. Notice the different colored formations. Here is a unique area where teleportation actually exists. If you stand up too soon and knock your head on the rocks, you will instantaneously be transported from seeing underground formations to seeing stars. Here's a rather large river of flowstone coming out of the cavern wall. Notice the nice little pillar coming down into the flowstone. Here is a stream of flowstone alongside beautifully formed cave pearls. Here's some interesting formations. The upper third of the picture almost looks like tapestry. Notice all the terraces on this flowstone. Look at all the beautiful colors in this cavern roof. Look at the beautiful stalagmites in the lower left. Wow, what a beautiful formation. Notice the 4 different kinds of rock in this beautiful room. Nature's paintbrush has been busy here. Check out the contrasting colors in this rock formation. Our tour guide informed us that this particular step is exactly 1 mile above sea level. Here is a combination of flowstone and cave pearls. These 2 stalagmites are almost translucent in color. Here's an interesting piece of flowstone. Notice all of the stalactites have been broken off by vandals. Disgusting. An interesting effect is created by the purple spotlight shining on these rocks. More interesting formations. What a gorgeous giant column. Flowstone columns basked in purple light. Stalactites cling to the rock wall. Beautiful flowstone along the pathway. Here's an interesting stalagmite forming on the flowstone. There's an interesting variety of minerals in these formations. Notice the beautiful pattern in the rock below the arrow. Notice the variety of colors in this formation. Amazing. Stalactites cling to a rock wall. Giant stalagmites sit on top of some flowstone. This giant stalagmite is beautiful. Regardless of the size, each stalagmite is unique. Take a moment to study all the different shapes on these stalactites. Pink lighting highlights the contrast in these formations. Notice the multiple columns in the center of the photo. These slender columns are so delicate. I hope nobody breaks them. What a beautiful variety of colors. The next few pictures show a variety of beautiful formations. This stunning formation reminds me of a giant pipe organ. The white calcite minerals in this formation gives it an interesting contrast. Check out the numerous columns. The detail on this column is magnificent. Hello, Stubby. These formations, left and right center, look like a fairyland village. Notice the long, slender column in the center of the picture. Beautiful. Notice the small caverns within this cavern wall. Notice the blue algae growing on the rocks. This is our final picture inside the caves, and what a delightful experience this has been. A man-made tunnel was made to the outdoors so visitors would not have to climb all the way back up through the caves to exit the mountain. We have just exited the caves through the man-made tunnel. Above us is the path we hiked to get to the entrance. The cave entrance is now directly above us. The next pictures are about our drive back to the campsite. From our vantage point, the entrance and exit of the cave are clearly visible. Here is the mouth of the cave. Notice the variety of minerals in the rock face above the entrance. Notice the rock fault east of the cave entrance. Is it possible this is the intrusion point where water leaches into the rocks to create all the beautiful formations inside the caverns? Notice the interesting rock formation on the west side of Cave Mountain. Notice the interesting plants along the side of the road returning to camp. Here's an interesting mountain peak on our drive back to camp. We have arrived at Vista Point Lookout. Here is the observation lookout. Notice the textured surface on the concrete wall. It would not take much force to cause this interesting rock outcrop to fall off the side of the mountain. Here's a scenic mountain to the west of Lewis and Clark Caverns. This information board describes the various trees that live in the area. This tells you all about elk in the area. Pause the video if you wish to read the sign. This signboard talks about life in the valley. Here's a view looking south from Vista Point. It appears the caterpillar that spun this web has also killed the plant. It's amazing the amount of silk that has been produced by this insect. We're almost back at camp, and this concludes our scenic drive.